Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, June 13th, 2024. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Chris Colby, Steve Wilkes, and I formulate a recipe for an experimental beer using pasteurization to hopefully preserve the fruit flavor in a small batch fruit stout. We also taste Steve's Kölsch that we formulated on this show, and I force Chris to drink my 100% wheat raw white IPA. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who is helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Many thanks to the new Patreon subscribers who are signing up every week. Your help is very much appreciated. Financial supporters have already seen the video episode that I'm going to make public this Friday. It's the one where Steve and I taste my white IPA. This was the episode that we recorded after recording 2 audio episodes and another video episode. So keeping that in mind, I think we did pretty well. We kept it pretty much together. Now, I did make some edits that were hidden by the B-roll of the brewing process. You know, when you see, on-camera stuff of me brewing from the brew day, that gives me an easy way to hide stuff and cut stuff out, including the very first on-camera yawn in our history. It was a long day, but we got it done. Financial supporters also got a behind-the-scenes video and the recipe for the beer. We're going to have to get after it and shoot some more because we don't have any more in the can. But we do have beers in the works that we plan on shooting in the near future, including the beer that we formulate in this episode. It's in the fermenter, and I'm planning to bottle that one tomorrow. And on Monday, Susan and I bottled the big double IPA that Matt Giovanisi, Josh Secor, and I formulated last week. And according to my calculations, it came out at 8.6% ABV. And it's pretty darn tasty, if you ask me. Looking forward to sharing that beer with the guys. And since we bottled it all, it's going to be easy to share that beer. Also looking forward to a white IPA tasting with Matt and Josh later this week. We each brewed a version of the style. I have a feeling that mine will pale in comparison, even though they're all white IPAs. I'm hoping that my beer held up in the bottle over the past few weeks. But, both of those guys are excellent brewers. So, I'm hoping that mine's okay. Mine on tap, the beer on tap in the keg is changing over time. We can talk about that over the show, in the next show. I brewed both the white IPA and the double IPA with yeast from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. Whiteout from Imperial literally blew the lid off the white IPA bucket, and A37 Pog chewed through that giant double IPA in very short order as it sat on my warm porch. We've had a pretty mild spring so far, so it's not a hot porch yet. Primary fermentation was mostly done in just a couple of days, as you would predict with Kveik. Those 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open pouch of Imperial really got the job done, in this case without the need for a starter. Just call me Dusty Stirplate. Pog is Ebegarten Kveik and has been extended by Imperial as the seasonal yeast until August. So get you some to brew something tropical and fruity on your own hot porch. Ask your local homebrew store about A37 Pog from Imperial and check out all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. Okay, let's taste some Kölsch and make a little fruit stout. Chris Colby, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
Steve Wilkes, welcome back to the Breakfast Nook.
Thanks, James. I love it. Where's the bacon and eggs?
Well, I got them in the fridge. We'll fix you up. We just got done with Mexican food, so pardon any bodily noises that happen. Mostly apologies to Chris, because I can cut them out, most of them later. But you get to live through them. We've got a beer in front of us, and it's a beer that last time Chris and I were together, we formulated it for you, Steve.
That's right.
So what do we got?
We've got a Kölsch, which is a German ale originally from Köln. I don't really know how to pronounce Köln.
Say Cologne.
Okay, Cologne. I took German in high school, so I try.
And you're of German heritage, so you should know better.
I should know better. Anyway, from Cologne, and the clearer the better. This is pretty clear, but it's not clear. The really great examples of that I've had have been just like
crystal
clear. Crystal Gale clear.
And there's hair in it, though.
Yeah, it makes your brown eyes blue.
Nobody understands anything what we're talking about. So it's a West Coast.
That's right.
Kölsch.
It's a West Coast Kölsch,
or an East Coast Kölsch, rather, a New England Kölsch.
Yeah.
But talk about the recipe. We gave you a very, very, very simple recipe.
Well, you sure did. I thought there'd be a little work to do with it,
and you stuck to it.
And I did. I didn't play around at all.
Because you were texting me, you were like, "I think I'm going to use this for finishing hops." I was like, "There's no finishing hops."
Yeah,
Stop it.
Stop. Yeah. So it's about the simplest beer I've ever brewed. 5-gallon U.S. batch of 9 pounds of Pilsner malt. I don't know what brand I got because my local homebrew store couldn't tell me, but I know it's Pilsner malt.
Secret Pilsner malt.
And we used Dieter yeast from Imperial, our friends at Imperial. Mm-hmm. And the hops were a problem because it was supposed to have been either Tettning or, Tettning is what I kind of wanted to use.
Right, or Hallertau.
That's why I couldn't get the word out. But again, our local homebrew shop didn't carry those. And I didn't have time to try to order them, and I wasn't going to. So I read through the hop descriptions of the hops that they had, and they had a hop called Calypso, which I remembered I'd brewed with a few times in the past, and I thought, well, that'll work fine. And I ended up needing only 0.6 of an ounce of Calypso in order to get to the 25 to 26 IBUs that we're looking for.
And I think for the video, I think that's like 17 grams, something like
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it. Now, I brewed it at ale temperatures in the Carver Center for Fermentation.
Which only people in Northwest Arkansas who listen to our public radio station will get.
I still love it. And anyway, so it fermented at in my garage for about 70, 72 degrees, I think was the temperature in there. It was very pleasant. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. And I fermented it in an open fermenter. So I have one of those bucket fermenters, like a big, it's really generally use it for wine, or at least I do.
It looks like a big plastic trash can.
Looks like a big trash can. And then the lid is the airlock, and it allows, as long as there's positive pressure, it doesn't allow anything back in.
Right.
So that's what I fermented it in. I left it in the primary fermenter for 4 or 5 days. It was relatively quick. Made a huge kreuzen. I mean, there was just stuff like 6 inches deep on it.
Wow.
Once I determined that it was done, I racked it into a secondary fermenter, and then I stuck that in my beer fridge, which is at 36 degrees, and I left it there for about 3 weeks and just let it settle out in, bulk condition. And then I bottled it. I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. I still bottle. And I primed it. I primed the entire batch, so the 5-gallon batch. And I got all 5 gallons. I got about 53 or 54 beers at it. So I got actually a little bit more.
Wow.
And I primed it with 1/2 cup of honey.
Oh.
That's the sugar that primed it. That's it. That's the beer. The pre-boil gravity was 1041. The original gravity was 1045. This is all according to my brewing software, of course. And it finished right at 1010. And actually, it says it's a little light. It says, according to my brew father here, it says it's 3.2 on the SRM scale, And it says the parameters for the color should be 3.5 to 5. So while it may not be quite as crystal clear as it might be if it were done a little more less willy-nilly. And the IBU's clocked in at 26. And that's the beer.
So you didn't use any finings?
No.
I use, as I said on the video, I use Larry finings. Do you get that joke, Chris?
I'll pretend that I do. Is it a Three Stooges joke?
Yeah, Larry Fine was
Larry Fine.
One of the Stooges.
Okay.
Howard Fine and Howard, my law firm.
So what do you think, Chris? Be nice.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, the thing about a Kölsch is it's a light, sort of balanced, light and colored, moderate alcohol. Like, it should be a nice balanced beer. Mm-hmm. And this is at 26 IBUs. It's got just enough hops to keep it from being, like insipid. Mm-hmm. Just like I was drinking PBR over Memorial Day weekend because I was in the upper Midwest, and yeah,
that's worse than Perkins.
I don't know. It wasn't. It was a change of pace.
Yeah, it's so okay. Bad. I drink a PBR now and then, sure.
And it was like $10 for a 12-pack. I was like, whoa,
exactly. Hello,
yeah.
And anyway, but I mean, that was like fizzy water,
right?
I mean, you could, and this has, there's the flavor of malt. It's not knocking you over or anything, but there's flavor of Pilsner malt in there. There's just enough hops to balance that out. And yeah, this is a very, very drinkable beer, which is what it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
And I don't know if it's just power of suggestion, but I think on the very end of the sip as I'm swallowing, I don't know if it's just self-hypnosis, but I think I might be getting just a little honey, just a little, since you said you primed it with honey.
Maybe.
Chris, are you getting any kind of like a honey character?
Maybe, but like you said, maybe because Steve said it, then I'm primed to think. I don't know if I would have.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said, oh, that's honey without any prompting.
It's not sweet.
But maybe no, it's not sweet like honey because it's all fermented away, but there's still that. Yeah, I think there's some honey flavor in it.
I think it's delicious. And I would, you brought 3 extra the other day, and I forgot that we were going to do this show. So I drank them. So one of the reasons why you're here, as opposed to recording remotely at your house, is you had to bring more of these beers.
So, it was a good excuse to get together.
Yeah, exactly. So yay.
There's a little bit of. Oh, sorry. There's a little bit of like hop flavor, like very little, like because it was all bittering hops, but. To me, I get a little bit right at the end, which is kind of nice, right on the finish.
Mm-hmm. See, I do too.
That's how.
That was the thing I was going to say that I got was just a little bit of a hop, and I actually pick up a little lemon.
Oh,
just a slight, very slight, and I think that's due to the hops.
And you had an actual German evaluate these.
Oh, I did. My next door neighbor, who's a good friend of mine and was a customer when I had my shop, he's from Nuremberg, and. He slammed 3 of them about as fast as you could do it the other night at dinner. He's like, so I poured one. I was a little nervous, because he's a really good brewer and he knows beer. And I was like, okay, this is a German style, nowhere to hide beer. And before I could ask him if he wanted another one, he had drank it. Yeah, that's good. Give me another one. I need to get some liter mugs,
Yeah, so, some shaped like a boot.
Yeah, that's right.
Some Krugs. Yeah.
So yay, mission accomplished, I'd say.
Well, I remember that the Kölsch recipe that I had developed for my shop, I had a little Vienna in it. Just I forget, in a 5-gallon batch, maybe 3 or 4 ounces, just enough to add a little touch of color. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe it would have had that 3 to 5, SRM had I put a little bit of Vienna. And I've seen other recipes, commercial recipes, that they use a little Vienna in it. So I don't know.
And I think we talked about that, Chris. And we just decided to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can Yeah, little Vienna in basically any light colored lager can spice it up a little bit.
Hmm.
Add a little bit of color, a little bit of that good Vienna malt flavor.
Yeah.
Sort of like a not quite Munich malt flavor, but in between Pilsner and Munich.
Yeah.
It's a good malt, yeah.
Yeah, this is perfect beer for this time of year when it's getting warmer. And of course, now it's almost all gone, probably. So.
Yeah. I'm down to about maybe a 12-pack left because I can't stay out of it either.
it's it's a delicious beer. Well, congratulations to everybody.
To everybody.
So we're here to talk about our next recipe, and part of the reason why I wanted to brew this beer was I stumbled over the steam juicer in the basement again the other day, and so I was like, you know what, it'd be fun to do a fruit beer, and then I thought as well, how can we make it kind of more interesting than just brew a fruit beer? So I thought maybe we could design an experiment at the same time. And I've been wanting ever since Tim Lieber brought the pasteurization, the mead pasteurization. I've had half a beer, the mead pasteurization experiment to us at HomebrewCon. I can't remember where we were several years ago. I've been wanting to do a beer where I stop carbonation in the process in order to preserve fruit flavor, whether it's like a fruity, a nice big sweet fruity mead, that I still want to have carbonation, but I don't want to force carb it, or like this, like a nice big fruity beer that still has some residual sweetness, but also has some carbonation. So my idea is to brew a small batch of beer, maybe even just a 6-pack, design it so that it'll be a nice, interesting fruit beer, ferment it, add the fruit, like in the bottling bucket, essentially, blend it to taste, and then bottle it, knowing that there is, a lot of sugar in there to be consumed, and then do what we do or used to do when I would make root beer. We'd get the root beer extract, mix it up with water, put a ton of sugar in it, add some yeast, put it in usually PET bottles so you could see if they were getting tight, and then essentially do that. Whereas in the past with the root beer, what you do is once the bottles got tight, you put them in the fridge, and so hopefully they would stop fermenting. Mm-hmm. This time I want to pasteurize, like Tim Lieber did with his mead that time. So that's the challenge. And Steve, speaking of root beer and stopping carbonation, you've had some experience in this.
Oh yeah, a few years ago when my son was little, we were getting ready to have a birthday party, I think, for him, and I thought I'll make root beer, which I did, and then I put it in my clothes closet. It's not a good idea. And they didn't actually explode, but 4 or 5 of them the bottles just cracked open.
Oh.
So they were 12-ounce regular beer bottles.
Oh my!
And they just they didn't explode, but and then I had root beer all in my underwear, which it's like the most Homer Simpson thing I think I've ever done.
So it's a process where it's kind of risky because if you forget about it, or if you can't leave town when this is happening, you gotta keep on top of it, because what you want the yeast to build up enough CO2 that it carbonates the beverage, and then you want to stop that. But and I guess I could just put it in the fridge, but I want to send some to Chris, and so one way to stabilize the beer would be to pasteurize it in the bottle. So I may be getting ahead of ourselves here, but in that experiment, Tim Lieber pasteurized his meads at 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and the time to pasteurize at that temperature is 5 minutes. So in order to do that, he used a sous vide, and he put the bottles into the sous vide And then he had another bottle that without a cap with just water in it, so that he could put a temperature probe in there to see when the liquid in the bottles actually got up to 160 degrees. Once it got up there, he held it for 5 minutes and then let the meads cool down kind of naturally in the water. I think because he was afraid of shocking the glass of the bottles by cooling them down too quickly. But as we know, pasteurization is a matter of time and temperature. So if you're pasteurizing at a higher temperature, like, for instance, if you're at the boiling point, it's 0 time. It's pasteurized instantly. If you're at 160, I guess according to Tim, the recommended time would be 5 minutes. I want to pasteurize at a lower temperature, which means if you hold it at 145 degrees Fahrenheit, and I should have looked up all these temperatures in Celsius, but if you hold it at 145 degrees Fahrenheit, you need to hold it for 30 minutes. So I'm thinking that if we pasteurize at a lower temperature, we'll be able to preserve more of the fruit flavor of the beer, and kind of be more gentle on the fruit flavor. So, Chris, what are your thoughts? I've talked a whole bunch. What are your thoughts on all this process?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you want to do. It should work. I mean, I think the difficult part is going to be knowing when to stop the fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
About the only thing I can think of is take one bottle and somehow, I don't know, put a balloon or something on it that would inflate so you could tell that the carbonation's building. Or I mean, if you had a pressure gauge that you could put on one, something like that. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I think if you pick the right time to warm them up and pasteurize them, it should work. But I think it would be relatively easy to go either past the time or not reach the correct time.
Mm. Was it a Spunding valve?
Yeah, we need a Spunding valve.
A Spunding valve.
It's similar to that, yeah. But you just turn it so that it didn't release pressure at all.
Well, I've got these Mr. Beer bottles, the PET, very soft, pliable plastic. And what I've done, when I did root beer was, you make the root beer, you set it in a bottle conditioning place, and like every day you come by and you squeeze the bottles, and once they get tight, it's like, okay, now it's time to put them in the fridge.
Sure.
So
that ought to work.
It's a low tech way of doing it, but it should work.
Hey, at the home level, sure.
And if we do a very small batch, there's only a few of these bottles. And I'll keep them in the bathtub in the guest bedroom.
Yeah, if you had a bigger batch, you could sacrifice a few bottles as the time went on. But if you're only doing a very small batch, you need to not do that.
Right. So my initial thoughts on the recipe is, I mean, we could even do as little as, what we do with the hop sampler is we do a 6-pack, which in the, the Mr. Beer bottles are bigger, so there'd be less than that. But so what the recipe for the hop sampler is, into 3 quarts or 3 liters of water, I put 1 pound or 450 grams of light dry malt extract in there. Just bring it up to the boil, shut off the heat, put in some hops for a 10-minute hop stand, and then chill it, and then pitch the yeast, and that's the hop sampler. I think you wanted to do a more interesting beer, though. What was your suggestion on what kind of beer to brew?
Well, I thought, a lot of people, when they brew fruit beers, they take a light base and then they add the fruit to it. But I've done some beers in the past where you make a dark beer, like a stout or a porter, and then add, like raspberries or cherries or something with, fairly assertive. And, you can make a fruit beer that way. And then I also thought, like, given that you're going to stop the fermentation, there's going to be some residual sweetness in there. Maybe add a little chocolate, a little actual chocolate, like cacao nibs or cocoa powder, and have it be, like chocolate and cherries or chocolate and raspberries and a dark beer.
Yeah.
That sounds... and with the sweetness.
I actually sold a kit like that. I sold a chocolate cherry stout.
Oh.
And it was very popular.
Oh.
Yeah.
So raspberries or cherries or...
It's a dark stone fruit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or well, berry's not a berry. I mean, berry's not stone fruit, but it's red.
Right.
I mean, it's got...
Right. Yeah.
Oh, cherries are in season now, too, by the way.
Oh, where?
I guess everywhere, because I'm seeing them all over at the grocery stores and the co-op and everything for like $3 a pound. I'm about ready to go buy a bunch of them.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So maybe cherry instead of raspberry. Although you can buy frozen raspberries at any time. Probably pretty good. Okay. So what do you think about? I mean, what do you think about that base recipe of just the extract, no boil, in the with the beer? We could still steep some specialty grains ahead of time and do just an extract with specialty grains beer.
Yeah, to keep it simple, just use the extract beer as a base. Just steep some, chocolate malt or some roasted barley or roasted malt in there. A lot of times I tend to default. I like a mixture of dark grains. I think they all work together pretty well. But steep some dark grains, maybe a little crystal, and then you can add a little bit of cocoa powder or cacao nibs, vanilla. A little bit of vanilla is also an option. Make it sort of with the sweetness. The chocolate plus vanilla and sweetness is a milk chocolate, and that would go well with cherries or raspberries.
Would you steep the cacao nibs in with the specialty? Like if I did like a 30-minute steep at say 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 C, just to get extraction of the from the specialty malts, would steeping the cacao nibs at that time would that be where you added those?
That's one possibility. That would work.
It'd be the easiest way to do it.
Because you're not doing a boil, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be another opportunity. But yeah, just and I don't know. I've never added it during what would sort of essentially be the mash if it's sort of steep. But maybe put them in like a plastic bag, take a hammer and crack them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to increase the surface area.
So let's talk about the specialty grains. What do you guys think about, the contenders for the specialty grains? Steve, you go first.
I'm a big fan of roasted barley.
Okay.
But I'm like Chris. I a little roasted barley, a little black malt, black patent or just black malt. Yeah, and a little crystal too, I think. But the crystal could be, if you wanted, you could even do like a special roast or victory or something like that, just to add a little nuttiness to it, which I think would be nice.
So, out of all those, so I've got roasted barley, black malt, and then what, a dark crystal?
You know what would be good? I think would be like Special B.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. It's dark, also
dark,
very
raisiny.
Sweet. Yeah, it would work well.
And how much of each?
Oh gosh, on this small of
this little bitty
beer, I don't know.
Like a couple ounces.
Yeah.
Each.
Honestly, a couple ounces. I don't really know. I'd probably look back at some of my older recipes and think, well, how much did I put in for this 5-gallon batch? And then I just scale it down.
Right.
And then go, well,
Yeah.
if I put a pound in on a 5-gallon batch, how much would that be in a 1-gallon batch? And just
So this would be a 6-pack. So basically multiply it times 8.
yeah.
So essentially, if you put 2 ounces in, that's the same as a pound in a normal beer. Mm-hmm. So would you put a pound of each roasted barley, black malt, and specialty?
I might put 8 ounces each in a 5-gallon batch. So
like a 1 ounce of each?
1 ounce. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that works, roughly in my mind. I think that would make a good beer.
Yeah, and then cacao nibs, what, a couple ounces of that just for grins and giggles?
Yeah, a couple ounces.
And vanilla. You don't want very much.
No, you don't want to turn it. I don't think you want it to become a vanilla beer.
No.
In my mind.
No, yeah.
Just like a few drops.
Yeah.
Yeah, vanilla extract.
Right.
A quarter
Would be
teaspoon,
good,
something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah. There's vanilla beans, but they're wickedly expensive.
Yeah. It's
And
overkill.
And if it's not going to be the standout flavor, it's not going to hurt to just do regular vanilla extract.
And are we done with the fermentables? Is that I mean that gets us there. I think that's
you
pretty
got a
good.
good beer.
What about yeast? We want to use dry yeast, so maybe Safale. What is it? SO4 or what's the English?
Yeah.
Yeah,
SO4
that'll
or
work.
Windsor, something like that.
Okay.
And I like the idea of using the SO4 or the Windsor because it leaves it a little sweeter. It leaves a longer finish than like Nottingham does. Nottingham kind of knocks it out, but like Windsor.
Yeah, Nottingham's very dry.
Yeah.
We'll be working against ourselves.
Yeah.
By using Notty.
And then hops. We don't need necessarily hop character. But, if I'm only steeping for 10 minutes, basically just doing a hop stand for 10 minutes, that tends to accentuate the flavor of whatever hop we use.
Right.
So, Chris, what are your suggestions on? It's probably a low alpha hop.
This would be a good candidate if you had any hop extract.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
Just add the alpha straight.
Mm-hmm. I actually still have about a milliliter of El Dorado hop oil, but and I've used it.
It seems like that.
It's pretty grassy.
Yeah.
So I might. It would. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have enough experience with that to know how to use it correctly, and particularly when you're brewing this small of a batch, you got to really hit
margin of errors.
Yeah, you don't have any margin of error.
Well, what about you? You mentioned Steve outside. You mentioned Willamette.
Mm-hmm. I think Willamette would work well, and I think Liberty would work well, and Mount Hood I think would work well. They're just kind of mild and for that matter, Fuggles would work well. I mean, along the same lines. But Willamette just seemed to, as I was telling James earlier today, I had actually it was a cream ale, but I used Willamette and Liberty together in the recipe, and I really liked the hop balance. And it was just a lovely little hop character without being in your face. You could still tell that there were hops in it. I mean, it still had a presence, but it didn't overwhelm you. It wasn't like using the same amount, say, of Citra and, I don't know, Warrior or something like that just kind of really blows you out. But anyway, that's my suggestion.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, Willamette's a nice balanced. It doesn't have a strong varietal character. It's a nice hop.
So I could steep like an ounce for 10 minutes and probably be, because that was a sweet spot because I think we looked it up and it's like around 4% alpha acid. So an ounce of that steeped at 10 minutes will give us plenty of bitterness. We'll bring some of that hop character to it. But I don't think it'll get in the way, especially if we have all these, specialty malts and the cacao nibs and a little bit of vanilla. So should I just go to the grocery store and see if I can like find some cherries, and if I get fresh cherries, and if I can't find cherries, maybe, some frozen raspberries, and
Yeah.
and I'm thinking,
Or
yeah, go ahead.
cherry puree would work really good.
Mm.
The little cans of cherry puree.
Mm-hmm.
That should work really well, as well.
Or raspberry puree. Okay.
The kind you find in a second-hand store.
Yeah, I like that second-hand puree.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Gently
Now, don't get
used
raspberry
puree.
puree.
Yeah.
They use that on your hair, and it's just not as
Gently used puree. So I'll kind of wing it on the fruit, and I was thinking that I could, like I say, I could rack to like my Mr. Beer fermenter, my Mr. Beer keg, and add the fruit juice kind of on the fly, and kind of do a tasting, mixing it just a teeny bit too sweet, because some of it's going to be, not a whole lot, but some of it's going to be fermented, in the bottle conditioning, and also the pasteurization might numb some of the, might dull some of those fruit flavors as well.
actually. It might very well. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the only thing that I won't say overly concerned about, but that was the one thing that I wondered about. It was adding that heat to the fruit and to the hops, actually, and what it would do to the flavor. But I liked your solution of doing it longer, lower.
Yeah. And it's an experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that it'll be a nasty beer, but there's only going to be a little of it. That's my motto.
So if you opened a 3-barrel brewery, it might be nasty, but there's not very much of it.
That's right.
That's great marketing.
Come on in.
Come on in.
We'll give small samples.
We just call them junior samples.
That's right. BR549 Brewing. All right. Well, I think we got anything else on the beer, the recipe.
What kind of water are you going to use? You're going to do anything to the water, or just use filtered water?
I'm going to filtered tap water.
I think that's all you need.
Yeah. Could be like I say, could be bad.
I think it'll be a fine little beer.
But it could be good.
Yeah.
And it could be about 7%. So, appropriate.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, are you in the mind to have a bonus beer that you can poop on?
For me to poop on.
I took the risk of sending you another raw beer after you liked that first one so much.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's not a... Oh, well, all right. I'll try it.
I shouldn't have told you.
No,
Dang
you
it.
shouldn't. You should have just...
Dang it. Strike that from the record.
All right,
I
I'll
can
pretend
attest that he
didn't hear
boiled it for 5 hours.
The jury will
Wow.
ignore that. Okay, well, I'm going to hit pause, and then I'm going to go up to the keg and get us, if you're in the mind for a sample, Steve.
I would love some white IPA.
And then we'll be back. Okay, so what you've got is a bottle conditioned beer. When I packaged this beer, Susan helped me bottle 12 of them, and then I primed them in the bottle. Steve and I are tasting beers off the keg. So there's a lot of schmutz in the bottom of this one, because all the protein stayed in the beer. This is 100% wheat, so 12 pounds or 5.4 kilograms of white wheat malt. This is a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch. I did a hop tea like I did with the hoppy raw ale, and into that I boiled for an hour in that, probably about 3 quarts or 3 liters. An ounce each of Citra and Amarillo. And then when it came time to mash out, I had a stuck sparge, of course, because it's 100% wheat. So I had to deal with that by squeezing the bag. But once I collected the wort in a bucket, it was at 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 C, and I did a 10-minute hop stand with, again, another ounce of Amarillo and Citra. And then I pitched B44 white out from Imperial, and it literally blew the top off of the of the bucket fermenter. I had to clean up the bathroom the next day. When the fermentation eventually settled down, I dry hopped with another ounce of Citra and Amarillo. So we started at 1065, which, if you remember, the same amount of just 2-row, was my starting gravity was 1048. So 1065, final gravity 1008 for an ABV of 7.5%. Steve likes the beer.
I love it.
It's not just because you're sitting here, right?
Nope.
I'd be interested to see if Chris, you have the same reaction that you did with the barley. You know, this is wheat. It's a different animal.
This one has a lot less of that character that I didn't like. Yeah, it must be I don't know, the wheat must handle differently. But yeah, I didn't like that other one.
So does this one pass? Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, you don't have to say it. You can be honest. But you know, like I said,
it's just not my cup of tea.
Like you say your taste buds, you're tasting some kind of, are you still tasting some kind of like grassiness or some kind of raw graininess that's unpalatable?
It's a lot. It's very much diminished in this batch compared to that other one. Maybe because is white wheat's like a huskless thing, right?
No,
it's a different variety.
It does have a husk. Okay,
What I
that's a
taste
different type of husk.
I think I know the flavor that you're talking about, and it's just that kind of almost a little bit like eating a little bit of raw dough, like pizza dough. And I get a little bit of that. You can tell it's not cooked. I don't really have the right word for it, but I can taste that kind of the rawness of it. Now, I actually quite like that flavor. So, but if you don't, then you wouldn't like this.
Is it a yeasty character? Would you characterize it as yeasty, or is it?
I characterize it as flowery. As in wheat flour.
Right.
Flour.
Right. Not floral.
Not floral. Yeah. And it's very slight. It's not like, oh, sheesh, what are you drinking that for? But I kind of like it. It's just a change of pace. Now, I would say this. This is probably not a beer that I would brew, because you've brewed plenty of it for me. But I like it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess maybe because I've been drinking so much of it lately, but the oddness has, I guess, worn off with me. To me, especially, it's been around for a while, and it's developing sharper. Like the hoppiness to me is coming through more. It's kind of like a sharper character, and I don't know if that's because protein is settling out eventually, or but it's not sort of some of that roundness in the very beginning has gone away, and to me it's just more of just like a big drinkable, way too drinkable,
Yeah. Well,
hoppy beer. I think the hops come through nicely on this one.
Do you remember some years ago? This is probably going back 10 to 15 years ago. God, we've been doing this a long time. But you brewed a 100% wheat beer, and we did a show on it. And actually, we did the show at my house. I just happened to remember it. And I remember that beer, 100% wheat beer, was crystal clear, where this was a little cloudy because it's got the protein in it.
Right.
And I remember that beer as being very lemony, very sharp. The flavor was sharp and crisp and very, not lemon pledge. It wasn't gross, but it was very lemony, and it was very nice. This isn't at all the same beer, even though it's 100% wheat beer.
Yeah, like I say, all the, after I racked the beer out of the fermenter, it was the least amount of trub that I've ever seen left over in the fermenter, and I think it was yeast. I think it was just all yeast, because there was never a protein break in this beer.
Right.
So it just all stayed in. I don't know. It's something. It's this was a problem child. You got a stuck sparge. The mash tun or the kettle was a lot harder to clean and the fermenter were both a lot harder to clean because this 100% wheat trube and Kreuzen, it was just super sticky and gummy and it blew the lid open on which I should have used firm cap S. I didn't. Blew the lid open on the fermenter. It kind of, I went to keg it or to package it, and I moved it into the kitchen, and then it started fermentation up again. So it wasn't done. So it's been kind of a problem child, this beer. So I don't know if I'll brew it again, but I don't regret it. I'm enjoying it. So, and again, kudos to Mika Leitinen for the inspiration and the information. And opening our eyes to another technique, another way to brew beer.
Mm-hmm. Is there I don't know anything about brewing raw beers and the history of it. Is there a brewing tradition somewhere, like Upper Lapland or something like that, where they brew, where that's the way that they brew beer?
Well, that's the way they used to brew it. I mean, back that interview with Mika.
Well, that's
go back
true.
And listen to that. Back in the day before. Kettles were big enough kettles where you could boil a full batch in were affordable enough to have one.
Gotcha.
They didn't boil beer.
Okay.
Just because it wasn't practicable. You could boil a small amount of something, but you couldn't boil a whole amount. You could boil the water in enough water to bring, to change your mash temperatures, to raise your mash temperatures, things like that. But to have a metal kettle that was big enough to boil a whole batch of beer was, a luxury. So
nice.
Anyway, there you go. So I won't send you any more raw beers, Chris.
Thank you.
And I will. I'll let you guys know how the brewing session goes with this other experimental beer, this fruit beer. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, James.
Many thanks to Chris and Steve. I have high hopes from a little stout. So far, so good. And I forgot to put the cacao nibs in the mash or in the steeping in the beginning. So I have made a tincture with vodka with the cacao nibs, and boy, it smells good. I plan on firing up the steam juicer this afternoon. If you have a brewing question, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voice, and we'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.